Well, if it isn't a new plugin by Safari Pedals, this one is a banger. Let's talk about Noaim's mastering console. Before we dive into the video, if you want to pick up this plugin, if this is something that you've decided to pick up after watching this video, I would highly appreciate if you use my link below. Otherwise, I appreciate you being here, and let's dive right in. So basically, this plugin is based off of Noaim's mastering console that sits on his desk, and anytime there's any video that he's involved in, you can see this sitting in the background. So yeah, let's quickly talk about all the sections on the plugin. You can see that we have filters, we have an input section, we have a saturation section, we have an EQ section, and we have an output section, a de-esser, and a clipper. And then up top, the usual suspects, we got oversampling, we have the auto gain, we have a blend knob, your preset section, and then we have the on and off button, and then we have the manual itself. So I have this little beat that I produced, and I was like, you know what, this is like the perfect timing. Saw this come in my email, I was like, let's do it. Let's crack this plugin open. Let me go ahead and use it on this beat. Let's go ahead and play it just to see, you know, kind of where we're at, where we're working with. I'm gonna keep the plugin on because I intentionally produced through the plugin. Not saying this is how you should use it, but this is what I like to do when I'm testing new stuff to kind of see where we're at. So let me go ahead and play it, and we'll go from there. I'm going to show you how I would use it and the things that I would do and try my best to explain what I'm doing. Everything visually makes sense. It kind of has a flow. So as you can see, the first thing we have is we have our filters and we have our input knob right up here. I'm personally not going to use the filters because I am filtering within the individual tracks themselves. I just don't feel like it's necessary for this. So yeah, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drive the input a little bit just to get a little bit of juice out of the track. So as you can see, I tried to demonstrate you driving not as much input into the console itself. I was using my meters, and then obviously towards the end, I was driving right up to that 0 mark. Now, obviously the input gain is most likely going to be a clean gain, but the thing that's not going to make it clean, which I think could be cool and a cool way of using it, is if you have your saturation cranked up a little bit, maybe that allows you to kind of think differently while you're driving the input of the console. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I do like the way that it sounds with me driving a little bit more input. And to be honest, I'm not going to mess with the saturation because I feel like the default that they chose, there was some thought put into it because it's not too much, but it's enough to kind of keep you moving forward and, you know, get you excited about using it. I'm going to keep it where it's at. I'm not going to use any of the filters as well. It's kind of cool because you can filter off what you don't want saturated. But I do want to play it without the saturation section just to kind of show and demonstrate what the saturation is doing. So for me personally, I mean, that bass is definitely coming up. The upper mid-range, you know, where the top end of that bass is living that I made, I think that's where it's really benefiting the most, in my opinion. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the equalizer. It is like a back style EQ. You can see that they chose 40 and 12K. If you watch my videos, you would know that I like 40 hertz. So I thought this was cool. I was like, all right, this already has my attention. This EQ is very smooth, and I'm about to show you it. We can like really push the EQ, because sometimes I feel like with EQs, and especially digital EQs, it can sound a little bit too brittle, a little too harsh on the top end, and I don't know, the low end sometimes can sound a little messy and a little flubby, if that makes sense. I'm gonna go ahead and play the track, and then we're just gonna adjust the EQ as I go and figure out where's the best spot for this track. hear, the EQ is like super smooth. I mean, I was like cranking 5 dB on both the low end and the high end. And initially when I first cracked open the plugin, I was like, all right, let's see how brittle this plugin is going to be. But I mean, as you can hear, it's like super smooth. And obviously it's going to be different on the material or the track that you're working on, because these are shelving style EQs. I think that's why it works. I like more broad style EQ. So I think for this, that's why I was like really excited about what it was doing. And then the 40 hertz, I mean, when I had it cranked, you can hear that kick come out a little bit too, which I think can be helpful. And then overall, we're getting some gain. So that's less that we have to do with our limiter. I'm not really a mid-side person, but it is there if you're into that. All right, and then the next section we're going to talk about is the de-esser. I personally don't de-ess on anything that I'm mastering. There are times that I've had to use a de-esser. It is nice to know that this is on there. I'm going to use it just to demonstrate what it can do. I try to demonstrate the different frequency points. It does come in handy when you need to use it. I mean, in this case, I could see myself using it for like the snare or the shaker, obviously trying to fine tune to make sure that you're doing the correct amount, because it can get a little artifacty. Otherwise, it is nice to know that it's there. I think it was a good touch, and it's just one of those things where it's just like, you didn't know you needed it until it's not there, I guess, if that makes sense. All right, and then the next thing, and almost the final stage, is the clipper. You can use it to your benefit to just get a little bit more extra juice, a little bit more extra saturation for what a clipper would do in that case, but also just kind of keeping your track in place. Another thing that can help your final stage of limiting. And then this final stage would be the output stage. So maybe this is our final gain that we add. I like to work with not trying to make my limiter work as hard, and I don't have to apply as much gain. Let's see how much more dB we can get out of the track with using the output knob. So you can see, I mean, we can add like a pretty good amount of output on the final stage. It is a cool way to get gain out of something like this versus just having to use a bunch of different plugins and use your limiter for the final amount of gain. You can use the input stage. We got our saturation, we have our EQ output, and the clipping stage. So I do like producing through it. Like I said, I'm assuming that's not what it was intended for, but for the most part, there really aren't any rules when it comes to these kind of things. So hopefully this makes sense. Hope this was super helpful. If you want to pick this plugin up, go ahead and use my links below. I would really appreciate it. Otherwise, thanks for stopping in, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.